Everyone thought I was just a quiet girl who got lucky with a scholarship. No one knew what I had sacrificed or what was stolen from me. My parents smiled for the cameras and told the world they made my success possible. But behind closed doors, they were spending every cent of my scholarship money on themselves. I stayed silent for too long, until one moment on a national stage when I took the microphone and exposed everything. Right in front of the people who taught me how to lie, I told the truth. I used to think that getting into an Ivy League school would fix everything, that it would finally make my parents proud, maybe even grateful. Growing up, our house was always a little too cold in the winter, a little too hot in the summer. We weren't homeless, but we were always one missed paycheck away from disaster. My mom worked as a receptionist at a dentist's office. My dad bounced between construction jobs. There were months when we lived off canned soup and instant noodles. And I remember my parents reminding me constantly that every light I left on every pencil I lost was money we didn't have. School became my escape. I buried myself in books, joined every club I could, volunteered, competed anything to keep myself out of the house and in front of people who valued effort. I wasn't trying to be exceptional. I just didn't want to feel like a burden. My parents never came to parent-teacher conferences or school events. They weren't cruel exactly, just distant. They treated my straight A's like background noise, something expected, not celebrated. If I got an award, they'd nod and say, "Good, that's what you're supposed to do." But I never gave up hope that one day I'd do something big enough for them to finally look at me and see someone worth admiring. That big thing came my senior year of high school. I had applied to 10 colleges. 8 of them said yes. But the one that mattered, the dream I had whispered into my pillow since I was 12, was Columbia. I still remember the day I got the email. I opened it alone in the school library. When I read the word congratulations, I cried so hard I had to run to the bathroom so no one would see me. It wasn't just the acceptance. It was the scholarship. A full ride, tuition, housing, meals, books, and even a stipend for personal expenses. It felt like the universe was finally telling me, "You're going to be okay now." When I told my parents, I expected some kind of celebration, but their reaction surprised me. My mom blinked slowly and said, "So we don't have to pay anything?" "No," I said, smiling. "It's a full scholarship. Everything's covered." My dad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "And this is because of all those classes we drove you to, all the money we spent on your school supplies." I didn't know what to say. I'd been walking to most of my after-school activities since sophomore year. Over the next few days, I started noticing something odd. My mom started making more phone calls, long, whispery conversations in the kitchen. My dad spent hours on the computer, which he usually avoided. Then came the strange questions. Did they say anything about extra funds? Like, is there money for us to help you manage? Do we have to sign anything as your parents since we raised you? At the time, I chalked it up to confusion. They'd never been to college. They probably just didn't understand how scholarships worked. A week later, my aunt called to congratulate me. "Your mom said you won that award because they invested in you all these years. That's so amazing." She said it was all those tutoring sessions they paid for. I had never had a tutor in my life. At first, I let it go. Maybe they were just exaggerating a little, trying to sound good to the family. But the stories kept growing. My parents began telling everyone that they had paid for my education from the start, that Columbia was recognizing them for raising such a brilliant child. I was suddenly being paraded around like a trophy, brought to family gatherings, made to recite my achievements like a script. And the most painful part, I wanted so badly to believe they were just proud of me, that this was their strange way of showing love. But deep down, something didn't feel right. One night, I overheard them talking in the living room. "She's going to owe us big time," my mom said. "That scholarship money's going to change everything." My dad replied, "She better remember who got her here. Time for her to start paying us back." I couldn't sleep that night. I tried to focus on the excitement of moving to New York, starting my new life, meeting people who actually understood me. But the truth was, that house, my family, it wasn't just physically cramped. It was emotionally suffocating. Every moment of joy came with a shadow. Every success was somehow turned into a debt. The day I packed for Columbia, I hugged them goodbye like a stranger. I smiled. I thanked them. I said all the right things. But something in me had already shifted. I didn't know then how far they would take things. I didn't know they would find a way to access part of my scholarship stipend. I didn't know they'd go from taking credit to literally taking cash. All I knew was this: I had worked for everything. I had earned every single opportunity, and someday, if they forced me to speak, I wouldn't lie for them, not again. The first few months at Columbia were a whirlwind, exciting, overwhelming, and full of promise. The city was bigger than anything I'd ever known, and the university's halls buzzed with brilliance. I was finally living the dream I'd worked so hard for. But that dream started to crack sooner than I expected. I began to notice something strange about the scholarship funds. Despite being promised full coverage tuition, housing, meals, even a personal stipend, I found myself scraping by for basic things: books, groceries, transportation. It didn't add up. At first, I thought it was just the complicated system. Or maybe I'd missed some paperwork. Then came the phone call from my mom. Her tone wasn't warm or proud. It was something colder, more demanding. "Lily, you need to publicly thank us," she said. "You wouldn't have this scholarship without us. You should show your gratitude." I was stunned. "Mom, this scholarship is because of my work, my grades. The school pays the tuition." "You don't understand," she replied. "We raised you. We invested in you since day one. You'll tell everyone that." I didn't know what to say. It felt like I was being forced into a role I never agreed to play. And it got worse. Word got around family gatherings that my parents had paid for my education. They told relatives I owed everything to their sacrifices, that the scholarship was just recognition of their hard work raising me. Suddenly, I was no longer the proud scholarship recipient. I was a trophy, a product of their efforts. And behind closed doors, they began taking money from my scholarship. When I checked my bank account, I saw withdrawals I didn't recognize. Money that should have been mine to cover expenses was disappearing. When I asked, they said it was family support or shared living costs. But the truth was, they were spending it on themselves. A new car, home renovations, fancy dinners. I felt betrayed. One night, when I confronted my mom about it, she snapped, "You're ungrateful. We gave you everything, and now you want more." My dad backed her up. "You don't think going to college is just about you. Everyone contributes. You'll pay us back one way or another." I wanted to scream, to run away from it all, but I stayed silent, holding the pain inside. The loneliness and exploitation gnawed at me every day. Friends told me to stand up for myself, to get help from the school or legal aid, but I was scared. Scared of losing my family. Scared of being labeled selfish or ungrateful. Scared that if I made a fuss, they'd cut me off completely, leaving me with nothing. But the injustice grew too big to ignore. Every time they bragged about supporting me all these years, I felt I wasn't their possession to brag about or their ATM. I was the one who earned this. This wasn't just about success or failure anymore. It was about fairness, and I was ready to fight for it. The weeks after confronting my parents were the hardest I had ever faced. I thought things might get better once I spoke up, that maybe, just maybe, they would realize what they were doing was wrong. But instead, everything spiraled out of control. It started with subtle things. My parents became colder in their messages and calls, making excuses for why I needed to keep sending them money from my scholarship stipend. It's family support, they insisted everyone chips in. But I was the only one actually giving. They stopped answering my calls as much. When I asked why, my dad would say, "We're busy, focus on school," but I knew it was because I had challenged them. At school, I buried myself in studies and extracurriculars to escape the stress. But even there, the shadow of home loomed large. I constantly worried about money, about how I would survive if my parents kept taking from me. I started skipping meals, buying used textbooks, and relying on friends for rides. One evening, after a long day in the library, I checked my bank app and froze. There was a big withdrawal, far more than usual. When I called home, demanding answers, my mom's voice was sharp, almost mocking. "That's the money for the new car," she said. "You should be thankful you don't have to worry about stuff like that." I wanted to scream. That car wasn't mine. It wasn't a gift. It was my money. The tension between us became unbearable. Every conversation was a battlefield. When I tried to explain how hard it was for me, they accused me of being selfish and disrespectful. "You think we don't work hard? We did this for you." But I saw the truth. The truth was they were using me. My success was their credit. My money was their cash, and my sacrifices were theirs to claim. I started keeping receipts, tracking every cent. I logged calls and messages where they pressured me to send money or to thank them in front of others. I confided in my closest friends who offered support and suggested I find a counselor or legal advice. One day, I gathered enough courage to bring the issue to my university's Student Support Center. They listened with concern and connected me to a financial aid advisor. Together, we reviewed the scholarship rules, and it became clear my parents had no right to the stipend. It was intended solely for my educational and living expenses. The advisor encouraged me to speak up officially, but warned that it could cause family fallout. I was terrified, but knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. At home, the atmosphere was toxic. My parents' tone grew increasingly hostile. One night, my mom yelled at me, "If you keep accusing us, you'll lose everything. Don't forget who put a roof over your head." I realized then that the family I thought I had was fracturing. They weren't the loving parents I believed in. They were people who saw me as a resource, a means to an end. Despite the pain, I started planning my next steps carefully. I talked to a lawyer specializing in student rights and family law. The lawyer confirmed that my parents were committing fraud by taking money that wasn't theirs. I also researched stories of others who had faced similar abuse, finding courage in their battles. I wasn't alone. Meanwhile, my parents tried to control the narrative with relatives. They painted me as an ungrateful child, making everyone doubt my words. Some family members sided with them. Others quietly reached out to me, offering quiet sympathy. The isolation hurt more than anything. One afternoon, I found out they'd thrown a party using my scholarship money, inviting friends and family, bragging about their success with me. I couldn't believe how far they had gone. I felt crushed, but also a fire ignite inside me. I began documenting everything: conversations, receipts, videos, gathering proof. I knew I had to expose the truth, not just for me, but for anyone who might be suffering in silence. As finals approached, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on me. My heart ached with betrayal and exhaustion, but my mind was clearer than ever. I wasn't just a victim, I was a fighter. That's when I got invited to deliver a speech at a National Student Awards ceremony. The opportunity was huge media coverage, influential attendees, and a chance to speak openly. I knew this was my moment, but I also knew it would mean shattering my family's facade and risking everything. It was terrifying. The thought of facing my parents publicly, watching their shocked faces in the crowd, made my stomach churn. But I also knew that silence was complicity. If I didn't stand up now, who would? The night before the speech, I barely slept. I rehearsed my words, imagined the reactions, and steeled myself for whatever would come. I reminded myself why I was there, not just for the scholarship, or the money, or the recognition, but for the truth, and for reclaiming my story. The moment I stepped onto the stage at the National Student Awards ceremony, my heart pounded like a drum in my chest. Thousands of eyes were on me. The audience, the media, even my school's dean and professors. I wasn't just accepting an award, I was about to tell my truth. I took a deep breath and began. At first, I thanked the committee, my professors, and my fellow students. Then I shifted. I stand here today not only as a recipient of this award, but as someone who has fought a battle behind the scenes, one that many students face but few dare to speak about. I said, my voice steady, despite the storm inside. I revealed how my parents had taken credit for my scholarship, how they had spent the money meant for my education on their own luxuries, and how they'd tried to silence me. I shared the pain of feeling betrayed by the people who were supposed to support me unconditionally. The room was silent. You could hear a pin drop. I saw cameras zoom in on my face, capturing every word. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. But I wasn't done. I presented the evidence I had gathered: texts, bank statements, receipts. I told the audience that this wasn't just about me, but about standing up for fairness and justice for every student trapped in similar situations. The dean's face was unreadable, but after I finished, she stepped forward. "We will be launching an investigation immediately," she said firmly. "No student should ever endure this." The media frenzy that followed was intense. The video of my speech went viral overnight. Headlines read, "Student exposes parents' fraud at National Awards Ceremony Scholarship." "Scandal rocks Ivy League family." "Lily's courage inspires thousands." My parents were stunned, caught completely off guard. Relatives who had once defended them started questioning their story. Suddenly, the power shifted. One unexpected turn of events was a call from an anonymous benefactor who had seen my speech online. This person offered to cover my living expenses for the rest of my college years completely free. It's my way of supporting someone brave enough to fight back, the voice said softly over the phone. Tears streamed down my face. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Meanwhile, the university took swift action. My parents were barred from accessing any financial accounts related to me, and legal proceedings began against them for misusing scholarship funds. My relationship with them changed irrevocably. The betrayal was too deep, but I found strength in knowing I had reclaimed my story. I used my newfound platform to speak out for others, raising awareness about financial abuse within families and encouraging students to protect themselves. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a survivor, a warrior. And most importantly, I was in control. After everything unfolded, life changed in ways I never expected. The pain of betrayal didn't just disappear overnight, but I found peace in reclaiming my truth and standing up for myself. The video of my speech kept circulating, inspiring others who felt trapped or silenced by their own families. The anonymous sponsor's generosity lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. No longer did I have to worry about money or survival. I could finally focus fully on my education and my future. I started speaking at events and universities, sharing my story to raise awareness about financial abuse and the importance of self-advocacy. The community I found was supportive and empowering, reminding me I wasn't alone. Sometimes people ask me how I got through those dark times. My answer is simple. I chose to tell my story, even when it was scary, even when it meant breaking the family illusion. That choice gave me back control and dignity. As I stood on that stage, facing down those who tried to silence me, I realized something powerful. I don't get to choose my parents, but I get to choose how I tell my story. And that has made all the difference. Today, I'm no longer just a scholarship recipient or a victim of circumstance. I'm a voice for truth, courage, and resilience, proof that no matter where you come from or what you've been through, you can write your own ending. This is my story, and I hope it inspires you to find your own strength and stand tall no matter what.